Hello, this is Nina, and I'd like to welcome you to the recorded version of the Something Sweet class held in Warner Springs at the Hub, Warner Springs, California. And we shall begin. Even from an early age, kids like sweet things. Sweet is the last sense we have in old age, and yet it has a very bad reputation. Here are some very positive things. The brain functions using glucose. New science keeps presenting itself, and it makes us bounce back and forth between good and bad. But here we have, in the bad cognition department, we've got cognitive decline, impaired memory and learning, mood swings, addictive behavior, and increased risk of depression. Take a look at this. An innocent cup of joe can have as much as 17 teaspoons of sugar if you drink your coffee away from home. Personally, I think it's all about balance. Balance must be rooted in fact, which means fact-finding, which means paying attention to labels, habits, and family culture. This is a garden class, so I'm always looking for ways that we, in this zone number 9 climate, can grow meaningful foods for ourselves and families. Let's learn where sweet comes from in general first. This is a photo of sugar beets. We can grow these, but not the sugar cane. That's from a humid climate. Honey we have all around us in those white boxes. There's also some new, easier home boxes and processing. Maple is great, but not for here. Agave, potentially yes. Mostly grown in Mexico and more known as the base for tequila. Agave is around us. In addition to its use as a sweetener, agave has also been used as a poultice to alleviate excessive gas, weak digestion, and constipation. It's good for ulcers, jaundice, liver disease, tuberculosis, diarrhea, and laxative. Toothache, now make this jump with me, and it's also good to reduce fever by promoting perspiration. There's a downside to everything. If you are intolerant to fructose, please avoid agave. It is also high in uric acid, which can produce gout. Added sugar and coloring by some manufacturers fixes consistency issues, but maybe isn't the best thing. Agave plants have an odd lifespan. Once a rosette has flowered and fruited, it dies. The word for that is monocarpic. They are sharp, pointy, sword-like things, and their pollination is very interesting. There is some debate about this moth, but look at how cool it looks. So agave has more calories than table sugar. It must be grown for at least 7 years. It's a good thing it's got low maintenance. Juice is extracted from the central pinna. It's heated, and a polymer fructose molecule called fructan. It has the consistency of honey. Here are some other sweet things. Dates from our local deserts. Stevia. And I had never used brown rice syrup. The rabbit hole. Here we go. Brown rice syrup is produced by exposing cooked rice to enzymes that break down starches and turn them into smaller sugars, and then they're filtered out. Brown rice syrup contains 3 types of sugars: maltose, and glucose. But don't be fooled by the names. Maltose is just 2 glucose molecules, while maltose is 3 glucose molecules. Therefore, brown rice syrup acts like 100% glucose inside your body. I'm not sure of my personal opinion on these. They sound like chemicals, but they have a happy face. Xylitol is in gum and toothpaste. Erythritol is often mixed with other things. Only says 1. This means you need to flip the back. And it seems like these should be in a pink packet. The Food and Drug Administration is watching out for our health. A teaspoon for a teaspoon, so it's easy to eliminate sugar from cooking. Erythritol is made from a process of fermentation, which is similar to how the other sugar alcohols are produced. So you source the material, you get your corn or wheat starch, and the starch is first broken down into glucose through enzymatic hydrolysis. Fermentation with different types of yeast or fungi are common, and the microorganisms consume the glucose and convert it into erythritol. Then there's a purification, and then it's packaged. So it is 70% as sweet as sugar, but with almost no calories. It's popular because it's clean and sweet in flavor, and it doesn't cause the same digestive issues as other alcohol sugars. With the idea of making our own sweet foods, I'm imagining us growing corn and wheat and setting up a still in the garage to make this alcohol. Aside from the way my mind travels, erythritol is considered safe for diabetics. As I mentioned before, the xylitol is used a lot in gums and toothpaste. But this is interesting. It is extracted from birchwood or corn. Tagatose is derived from lactose, which is a milk sugar. It is low in calories, sweetness, similar to sugar. The other interesting thing here is it is used as a prebiotic. When we had the chili pepper salsa class, we spoke of chilies having a system to rate the heat called the Scoville unit. Well, for sugars, the system is called the glycemic index, sometimes just GI. I'm going to show 2 slides, one with a high GI and one with a low GI food. While I'm not an expert on this, I believe it gives us some ways to regulate our intake, especially if we had no idea which things were high and which were low before now. These are examples of the low glycemic index. So how is this glycemic index used? Meal timing, blending proteins and carbs on the plate so you can also make a difference. It is wise to realize that you don't have to follow just the index, but rather to understand how the whole thing works. And this is just the first step. Now let's talk about stevia. So we had a contrast going in class. I brought in my stevia plant for the class to see and taste from. But this is how we're often seeing stevia, these boxes and packets. Please take a quick moment and read. But the processed leaves are similar to the green leaves. But there is, of course, a lot more science going on here. Stevia is in the Asteraceae family, and we have lots of wild native plants that are also in the Asteraceae family, which sort of made me think that this could be good in our region. So stevia has to be in a dappled sun, not bright sun, dappled. pH numbers shown here. They're a little finicky in the seed, so start them in March, and then they also will not tolerate temps below 45 degrees. So that means that it might be smart to put them into a pot, which you can bring indoors or have some kind of protection for in the winter months. The seeds, as I mentioned, are a little finicky, or you can buy the plant already grown at Armstrong's Nursery for about $6. This bit here is long and scientific, and for the people who are interested in that, I ask you to please pause the YouTube and take your time and read it. For the others, I'm going to just say that I usually like to just grab a small leaf and put it into my cup of hot tea. And I also will dehydrate it and put it into a glass jar, tight lid. If you don't want to do that, there's also the Mountain Rose Herb Store online. And they have a lot of great products, but a nice, clean, powdered stevia is a great thing there. Please take a moment and go through these sort of very scientific, wordy things if you are interested in this bitter taste. For me, number 2, the individual sensitivity is the most interesting one because some people simply can taste bitter more than sweet, and it's a genetic thing. That is really very interesting. So stevia comes in the green powder, the white packet, and also a liquid concentrate that is dispensed with an eyedropper. Sugar, table sugar, is sucrose, and it is perceived as a pure sweetness with no aftertaste. Stevia apparently has a vexing challenge to manufacturers because they end up blending other things in to overshadow the bitter notes. How to harvest stevia. Please harvest before the plant goes into blossoms. Harvest in the morning the way you would with any herb, and use scissors as opposed to pinching it with your fingernails. There are 2 ways to preserve. The first way is temporary, so it's just for a couple of days in a plastic bag in the refrigerator. The other is to dry the leaves on a screen in the sun or in the oven or in a dehydrator. And the conversion rate for usage is a quarter of stevia is equal to 1 teaspoon of sugar. So a quarter teaspoon to 1 teaspoon is the equivalence. There is an ongoing debate about why added sugar is unhealthy. And I'm just going to pause for you to read through this. Check out this banana eating cutie. It's a bat. I just love them. They go nuts over watermelon too. Okay, so we use the bat to break up so many words. I think the big word here is high fructose corn syrup. It is really something to watch out for. But read through, please. Allulose. This is a new word for me. But I think the most interesting thing about allulose is that it is not absorbed into the body. But here, read through. This is a conversation snippet with a friend who really knows her way around the kitchen. She orders things online, which is also things, many things, but also foods, which is a new option for us living out in the country. So carob might seem like a really great idea for us in Warner Springs. Let's run through some things. The carob forms into kind of a large tree, but the leaf patterns are really quite lovely. Notice the tire placement. The green areas are places it grows naturally, and on the right is an old botanical drawing. You can see how they start out on this image to the left and how they finish on the right. See the pods? These are carob seeds. Don't eat them. You eat only the pods, not the seeds. Carob is not super sweet, and it's not exactly like chocolate, but it does have a lot of nutrients. There's historical references like the carob seed was so consistent that it was the root for using the word carat for the size of diamonds. Carob trees are frost sensitive when they're young. You need to plant 2 of them close together because there's gender issues. And they'll get tall and wide, and they produce dense shade. They fix your soil like all legumes do, like think of growing lentils, and then think before you buy and plant. Perhaps you can plant them someplace that has a little bit of shelter that would keep the cold winds from the wintertime hitting it. There is a nursery in Vista called The Exotic, and that would be a great place to buy these. 8. Gender? Gender explained. Pollination in carobs happen through wind and insects. Please read through. And seeds can be planted to make more carob trees. So how does one harvest carob? So first, you need to know that the pods must be dry and brown when you take them off the tree. You must separate the seeds from the pods. You don't eat the seeds, you only eat the pods. You can do this with a mallet, like a hammer. Then you take the pods and you roast them in an oven, 350 degrees, for 15 minutes, and you kind of watch them to make sure that they don't burn. Once they cool off a bit, you grind them in a blender or a coffee grinder. You make it into a powder, and then you put it into an airtight container where it will keep for several months. I'd like to put in a good word for dates. We cannot grow them here in Warner Springs, but it's a short trip to the desert that does grow and distribute to the rest of the country. So Support your local farmers. Take a trip down to the desert. The palm trees are so beautiful. And enjoy the dates. There's fiber, there's nutrients. You can chop them up and put them in your oatmeal in the morning. You can eat them straight. They are fantastic. During the class, I made a watermelon drink, and we also brought the leftover rinds to the worm compost bin. I had chunked up a bunch of melon ahead of time, and I brought in a blender to which I added some water and some ice and some fresh lime juice. I also had some mint on the side. I know at home I like to mix my watermelon drink with a little bit of mint. Some people liked it and some people did not. One little kid said, "This tastes like toothpaste." Taste testing in a group is great fun. It saves a lot of money in each individual buying 10 or so different types. And I had that much on review. Conversations started up, and we also talked about where to buy things in rural areas, as this can be hard. Thanks so much for listening. I'm open to answering all manner of questions. Please just send me an email, nina@ninak.info. And if you're local, please consider coming to our upcoming events. I'll show them to you in this next slide. September 7th and 8th, the Warner Springs Artisan Guild Wine and Art Trail goes around to each of our vineyards. September 28th is movie night, where you can bring a blanket or your favorite campfire chair, and we'll have some popcorn, maybe burgers. October 5th is Star Watch, so if you have a telescope, come and join us. If you don't and you're curious, still come, please, and you might be taking your first or second look through a big telescope. October 19th, we've got our radio-controlled flyer group. So these are folks that fly the small remote control airplanes. Good group of folks, kind of fun, great in the morning. So come and see.